Hey everybody, welcome back. And today we're going to talk about what if Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye were a therapist? What type of therapist would he be and what type of therapy would he practice? So, if Holden Caulfield were a therapist, his approach would likely be unconventional, deeply empathetic, and perhaps a bit chaotic. Given his intense aversion to phoniness and his keen, albeit cynical, observations of human behavior, he wouldn't neatly fit into traditional therapeutic models. Here's a speculation. 1. Radically authentic and anti-establishment counseling. Holden would likely reject rigid structures and jargon, favoring a raw, honest, and direct approach. He'd probably see most conventional therapy as phony or too sanitized. His sessions would be less about clinical interventions and more about authentic, albeit sometimes blunt, conversations. He wouldn't shy away from challenging clients on their own phoniness or self-deception, using his sharp perception to cut through pretense. 2. Narrative therapy with a focus on calling out phonies. He'd be excellent at helping clients deconstruct the societal narratives that lead to superficiality and alienation. He'd encourage them to identify and reject their phony aspects of their lives, helping them articulate their genuine feelings and values. He might guide them to reauthor their own stories, but his focus would be on stripping away the inauthentic rather than solely building new narratives. He'd probably ask, "What's the real deal here?" a lot. 3. Existential and humanistic with a cynical edge. Holden grapples with themes of alienation, meaninglessness, and the search for truth in a world he perceives as inherently flawed. His therapy would likely touch upon these existential questions, encouraging clients to confront their own sense of isolation and find genuine connection. However, his humanistic approach would be tempered by his pervasive cynicism. He'd probably acknowledge the inherent difficulties of life and the pervasiveness of phoniness, rather than offering purely optimistic platitudes. He'd be less about finding your best self and more about not becoming a complete phony. Unstructured and relationship-oriented. Building genuine connections is difficult for Holden, but he also deeply craves them. In a therapeutic setting, he might develop strong, if unconventional, relationships with his clients. He'd prioritize the raw human connection over any specific technique. Sessions might involve long, rambling conversations, walks, or visits to places that evoke a client's real self, rather than a sterile office setting. Shadow work unintentionally. While not a formal therapeutic approach, Holden's tendency to point out hypocrisy in others and himself suggests he'd inadvertently facilitate shadow work. He'd help clients confront their own undesirable traits, inconsistencies, and the parts of themselves they try to hide, pushing them towards a more integrated, albeit uncomfortable, self-awareness. Specialization in adolescent alienation and grief. Given his own struggles with the transition to adulthood, his grief over Allie, and his feelings of disconnect from the world, he'd be uniquely positioned to understand and connect with adolescents experiencing similar issues. He wouldn't talk down to them. Instead, he'd be an adult who actually gets it. What he wouldn't do: behavioral interventions. He'd likely find these too mechanistic and focusing on superficial changes without addressing the underlying phoniness. Highly structured therapies like strict CBT. While he might accidentally use some cognitive restructuring by challenging thoughts, the systematic nature of CBT would probably chafe against his rebellious spirit, and anything that feels phony or overly academic. Ultimately, Holden's therapeutic practice would be a chaotic, deeply personal journey of unmasking pretense, seeking genuine connection and confronting the often uncomfortable truths of existence, all while maintaining his signature rebellious charm and perpetually unlit cigarette. What do you think? What do you think about his approach, and would you want Holden to be your therapist? Let me know in the comments, and I'll speak to you next time.